Learning how to code and getting technical skills is a big part of this battle of this transition into the tech industry. However, another big part of this transition is getting your first job in tech. And whether you're actively looking for something right now or are still learning and are thinking about the future and planning ahead, you're in the right place because I've interviewed 3 brilliant self-taught programmers on their experience of getting their first job in tech. All of the women that we will hear from today don't have a background in computer science. They used coding bootcamps, courses, and other resources to teach themselves how to code. And their experiences of looking for jobs are very different, so they have some very interesting insights to share. So let's hear from Tara, Tayllor, and Vicky.
Yes. This is only because I got lucky in the sense that my employer found me. Prior to starting my job search as a developer, I had signed up for AngelList, which is basically a place for employers and employees to match with each other. And they just so happened to reach out to me before I was even ready, to start applying. So it was easy in the sense that, I didn't have to apply to a lot of different places to get my first job. It just happened to come to me.
I would say that my first job is definitely not software engineering related. I actually had a finance degree back in college. I had a few positions as a data analyst or a business analyst, working in the financial industry for a few years. I came across an opportunity at a startup company in New York City as a data analyst who are supporting developers in the engineering team.
So my name is Tayllor and I am a self-taught front-end developer, and I recently just landed a job as a front-end developer. I'm also in a 6-month boot camp that was turned into 7 because of COVID. But yeah, I'm not done with that. I won't be done until July. So that's where I currently am in my tech career. It was not easy for me to get to the point where I got an interview. It was easy for me to interview and feel good about possibly getting the job, which I ended up landing. So getting to the interview was hard. I probably applied to 40 different places and I got 2 responses back. And one of the responses was no. And the other response was the job that I got, which they were open to interviewing me. I thought that once I got to the point where I could interview, and interviewing was I felt good about that part. I felt like I could get this job while I was interviewing, but getting to the point where I could get an interview, being self-taught for me with no job experience was hard. It was kind of hard. I think one of the pros is having the skill set of being self-taught is very important. And I think how do I say this? I think that it helps you grow in the future if you know that you can, if I know I can sit down and teach myself a language proficiently, then I could learn every language if I wanted to. Not saying that that's the best thing to do, but just looking ahead, I just think that it's such a great skill set to have. So I think that comes in handy because when you are on jobs, as much as things change in this industry from what I've seen, it's important to know how to learn kind of on your toes kind of quick. So if you know that you can teach yourself something sufficiently, then I think that that's a great skill to have. A con is I feel how do I explain this? I think that people don't take you as serious, and it's harder it was harder for me to get any responses. And I don't know if that is for everyone, when you're applying for jobs, but I feel like people with degrees probably get calls back or emails saying oh, we're just considering other options. I got nothing. So I feel maybe, it might be a little harder to get people to take you serious or, get an opportunity to interview or things like that if you are going against people who have degrees. So that's that.
Hardest part is having a full-time job where 100% of the time you are not coding and you work for more than 8 hours sometimes, and when you get home it's really hard to get yourself motivated. It's really hard to and make sure that you're studying every day. I think that a lot of times employers are not only specifically looking for a engineer who has a computer science degree. Yes, the degree might help in certain ways, but a lot of times they wanted to hire someone that they feel like they can pair a program with. This person can be a nice person to work with.
So I'm going to go ahead and start with the cons, and then I will finish with the pros because I want to leave that on a good note. So I would say there are two main cons. The first one is if you have a computer science degree, that expresses to an employer like right off the bat that you have some level of competence in this particular field, because in order to go to college and get a degree, you have to express competence and accomplish XYZ things in order to get that degree. So the employer right off the bat more or less can vet your skills just based on the fact that you have a computer science degree, which isn't the same as when you are self-taught. The second con is being self-taught is it can be, not always true, but it can be harder to grow a network of people to potentially connect you with jobs, because if you're going to college, you have your classmates and then you also have like the entire group of alumni from your university. So that can quite easily, connect you to different employers, people at different companies, that if you're self-taught, you may have to do a little bit more work to like grow that network organically. And then the pros. So I think one of the biggest pros of being self-taught is it can express to an employer that you're like quite serious about this, because this is something that you're doing amongst the rest of the things in your life. Not to say that's not true with like a computer science degree, but it takes a little bit more of like a dedicated focus, because you probably have a job, or maybe you have kids you have to take care of. There are a whole slew of other things that the traditional college student doesn't have to come up against in terms of learning and like cultivating that growth kind of mindset and learning computer science and coding. And if you're self-taught, that is something you have to be a little bit more disciplined about. So that can be a good thing. And then the other thing that goes along with being self-taught is more than likely it's cheaper than getting a college degree in computer science. And you have, I think, more flexibility to choose what works for you. In a computer science degree program, like in any college program, it's structured, it's set up, you're gonna do this thing and then this thing and then this thing. Whereas if you're self-taught, maybe you can choose a different language to start learning with first, or use different resources. You can choose the resources essentially that like will work for you and get you to where you want to be.
In my searching process, I think that a lot of times I created a lot of personal projects to make myself stand out from the crowd, and also highlights a lot of my non-technical work experience, because a lot of times I think that employees are looking for not only if you can code, but also are you a good communicator, or can you communicate properly, are you a nice person to work with. So I think those soft skills are also worth highlighting in front of the employers and the recruiters.
I don't fully know the answer to that, because I don't know what people with degrees do. I don't really have any friends who work in the industry who have degrees. A lot of my friends are self-taught and they're just like kind of coming into this industry as well. I did everything that I read I was supposed to do. I studied and learned languages as proficient as I could. I quizzed myself over and over. I got into a boot camp. I started a portfolio. I built projects on the side. I refreshed my resume. I made a cover letter. Like, those are the things that I personally did. I don't know if people who with degrees are doing all of that stuff too, or they just walking in a room with their degree and being like, I know stuff. I don't know, but that's how I approached this process. Just like read how to get a tech job, and then I did those things and then I got a tech job. So yeah.
So like I said, I got lucky in the sense that my employer reached out to me. That wouldn't have happened had I not taken the deliberate step to set up an AngelList account, because I knew when I was eventually going to be ready to job search that I wanted to use AngelList because I really wanted to work in the startup space. So I just so happened to get lucky that they reached out to me, before I started looking for jobs, but I did take that very deliberate step to set up that account. That way it would be ready to go when I was ready. Did you have to do anything different because you don't have a computer science degree? Again, no, not really. Because I had done a more structured kind of learning program where I had different projects that I had to build. I already had built up my GitHub presence with different projects that I had been working on, over the past 4, 5, 6 months. So that work ended up speaking for itself. My boss at the time when I did get that job, he said one of the main reasons they hired me, technically speaking, is because I had, a competency in JavaScript, which they could see on my GitHub profile. I would recommend a few things. So one, be open to anything and everything. Of course, this comes with some limits and some caveats. I don't think you should necessarily have to take, unpaid internship work. I would never advocate for that, but be open to maybe industries or companies that you might not otherwise considered. I ended up working for a startup in the advertising technology space, which is not something I ever in a million years thought I would do. So just keep an open mind, because the first job that you have doesn't have to be the job you have forever. You can always move later. So just be willing and be open to whatever may end up being the first opportunity you have. The second thing I would say is be diligent about your application process. What I think really works well is have a running list, keep a list of companies that you're really interested in, the job opportunities they have, the different technologies or tools that they maybe use. So that way, as you go along, you can cultivate an idea of the kind of companies you want to work for, the kind of jobs that you are a fit for or want to be a fit for, and you can start tailoring your resume and start tailoring your skills to those particular opportunities. And then the last thing I would recommend is just be persistent. If you have gotten far enough to kind of learn how to code on your own, congratulations, that's a really big deal. So just continue to be persistent in your job search. You may get 100 no's, but all it takes is one yes. Literally, that's all it takes. I know that sounds incredibly cheesy, but all you need is one yes, and then you've got your foot in the door, and then from there, it's a lot easier to make moves. So yeah, just keep an open mind, be persistent, and be diligent.
I would say, even if you're not confident, try to act like you are. Be very clear on your strengths. Obviously with my job, there were things that they wanted or there were requirements that I didn't have a ton of experience in, but I was very honest about being a quick learner and saying okay, maybe I'm not super sufficient in React or PHP, but I'm really strong in JavaScript, and I'm very confident that I can learn these other languages and adjust and fall into place. Just talk about your strengths, show personality, smile, be personable. I think that to me, when I was talking to the person that interviewed me, they made it very apparent that, a lot of the personalities they had ran into, I think they did 24 other interviews, weren't the best. And so I always just try to be personable and talk about myself and the job and not just be so serious and tense. I know it's just super nerve-wracking process, but try to make it a little fun for yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself. And like I said, just be honest about where you are. Lying about skills that you don't have.
I think that one of the biggest recommendations that I will give someone who are self-taught is having a really solid portfolio. I think that having your personal projects and things that you're passionate about building really speaks a lot about you as a developer, because I think a lot of times being an engineer, being a developer is trying to problem solve and trying to improve people's lives in a very technical way. And I think that having that passion and being who you are, and also having solid projects to demonstrate that you are a great candidate for that, is super important. I hope that all my recommendations and all my suggestions are going to be helpful. Thank you, Masha, for interviewing me, and try to use your platform, try to reach out to more women and specifically people that does not have a computer science degree background.
Thank you so much, Tara, Tayllor, and Vicky, for sharing your experiences, your insights, and your advice. Make sure that you're following these wonderful ladies on social media. The links will be below, because they're sharing so much value on a regular basis. I hope this was helpful to anyone who is looking for a job in tech right now, currently, or if you're planning to do that in the future. Let me know in the comments what stage of this process you're in. And don't forget that this is video number 3 of my series of interviews with self-taught programmers. You can find a link to the playlist with all of the videos in the description. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, share it with a friend who might be looking for a job in tech in the near future, subscribe to my channel, not forgetting to turn on those bell notifications, and of course we can also be friends on other social media. You can find me as Coding Blonde. Have a wonderful time of the day you're currently experiencing. Bye.